Tony Hayes. Tony's a frequent visitor to us at ASSAP, very well known, very well respected in the field, and really good to have him back. He grew up in Cheshire, England, and he graduated in science and physics with the chemical giants ICI. He left the security of a large company and formed his own training business before changing careers again, moving to the MOD and then later the Home Office before retiring. And Tony has investigated spontaneous activity since his first case in 1989. In his limited spare time, Tony is a musician and as a motorcyclist travels throughout Europe during the summer months, especially June time. Tony's also a volunteer for the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, and he operates his own group, Paranormal Investigation UK, as well as membership of the SPR and ASSAP. And we're very pleased to have you as a member, and really pleased to have you as a speaker this evening. So I will hand over now to Tony Hayes for part 2 of his Diary of a Poltergeist. Over to you, Tony.
Okay, thank you, Claire. And good evening, everybody. I hope everyone is well. Right, good evening, everybody, to part 2, Diary of the Poltergeist. It's been a bit of a rushed part 2 this really. I've only had about 3 or 4 days notice to put this together for you. So I'm going to attempt to try and make it as interesting as possible. Looks like a big melodramatic statement there, the Empire strikes back, but rest assured, by the time you get to the end of this, your opinion may well differ. Back in July, 3 months ago, as Claire reminded me, it didn't seem that long ago, I did a 2-hour and 15 minutes webinar. We just ran well over time, and really, members will never give me the opportunity or any opportunity to really ask questions. So what I want to do tonight is I'm not going to cover any of that 2-hour webinar. I'm just going to rely on your memory or some of those that may have gone back and rewatched it over the last few days and concentrate on some updates as well as an important update as far as part 2. I'm hoping it's going to last no more than 30 minutes. I want to maximize your opportunity to engage tonight and ask questions. And that's one of the reasons why I've got with me tonight those that have been part of the Poltergeist story. Karen Fowle, you're obviously familiar with. Karen's been involved with the case, certainly within a couple of weeks of myself getting involved. So he's been pivotal to current date. Kieran himself, he's a council member of the SPR as well as a spontaneous case committee member. Yinsky, I think you're all familiar with. She's been like a data analyst as I produce the data. Yinsky puts it into understandable format. That was a lot covered examples back in July. Hopefully we've got on tonight as well Nick Terrell. Not often in the public domain, Nick, but he's a fellow spontaneous case committee of the SPR. And Nick is taking a role over more these recent months with the case. I also noticed Caroline was on tonight as well. She played an important role back in January 2023. So quite a few people on tonight that have had some degree of involvement. I'm going to have to continue with the anonymity of the case. So I'm not going to talk about people's names or locations, unfortunately. That's just how it is. So I hope you enjoy the update and you've got some sort of memory for the July webinar and fire in the questions. And it may well be that Karen, Yinska, Nick, as well as Caroline, may have an opinion to express in the general chat. So what's happened since July 2024, since we last spoke? Quite a lot. So what I've actually done, I've gone through the what I call the diary and picked out some just general of interest for you, really. So you've got a flavour of what we're going to talk about this time. So as reported back in July, from November 2022 to July 2024, there were 1,195 separate events that occurred, each one being individually investigated. Since the last webinar to date, we've had the total is now 1,000 320, and that includes 125 events. So as you can see, since we last spoke about the case, phenomena has continued and still continues. Something that we fitted some months ago in readiness for the September investigation was additional camera. There were originally 5, and we've now moved on to 11. 2 outside the building, front and back. This is the first floor. They've got a camera at the front, 1 at the back. And that was to cover some, this year in particular, although we did experience this ourselves when we were in the property last year for 6 days and 5 nights. A phantom door knocker. Kieran himself experienced this in the living room. Someone knocked on the door, but we could never rule out outside interference from either the front or the back. So the cameras were placed in there for that reason. And it's just a question of just moving the cameras around, but the 11 cameras are in place really to continue to document this this case. Within a week of the last webinar, this unusual event happened in the kitchen. Now, again, this is just a screenshot straight from the diary. The white dot, it just obliterated out the female householder. The red circle is the door, and what you actually see where the camera's in the top corner of the kitchen is the door just spontaneously opens. You just hear a click. The 2 pictures below were taken by the householder, really to document that we don't hear it on the camera, anything falling. All we actually see is a door opening. And as you can see there's a catch there, which generally opens about 1 inch, and you have to give it a bit more force before it opens fully. The door just simply fully opened. The raps have intensified. I've got a great interest in raps, taps, bangs, and thuds. Yes, I've led a bit of a sheltered life, but as far as the raps are concerned, from the November of 2022, when the case first came to us, to really the beginning of this year, we didn't have many raps at all. Then suddenly, the house just, we had something, but in July, I think it was something like 165 raps events that had occurred from January to July of this year. And what we're beginning to experience is they were performing differently. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to cover this tonight. So very quickly, the bottom left-hand one is the frequency. And what you generally get with these raps is no side frequency. So they do perform differently. Somebody like me rattling on a table, they do perform differently. And these 2 in particular were identical in frequency. Now, why I work with the cameras, when the footage comes in, I'm using external sound cards as well as studio headphones. I don't listen to speakers, and I'm listening to see if I can make a judgment on what I'm hearing. If it's a dog barking, a bird squawking, people walking, that type of thing, and I'll form a judgment. So what I heard are really 3 sounds which sounded different. Yet when I looked at the frequency was practically identical, which doesn't make much sense. But that was noted. On the right-hand side with the screen, which is another one of the more thud sounds that we experience. So what I'm actually going to do, just bear with me a second, I'm just going to go back a couple of pages, is on the right-hand screen is the first floor. Sorry, left-hand side is the ground floor. That is the camera that screen was used for. The male occupier was where my cursor was there, by the cooker. He had, I think, a pan of soup on, something like that. And you hear this big bang. He perceives or interprets that as the sound is coming from within here, number 10, which is the hallway, and goes back in somewhat confused. So what I do then, I've got the footage for the kitchen camera, I've got it from the living room, and I've also got it from the hallway. The loudest one was, in fact, the kitchen, yet the male householder perceived it was coming from the hallway, the opposite side of the building, which doesn't take and make any sense at all. We then move into the frequency as it began to change. So we're generally around about 1,000 to 3,000 hertz, around that number. Then suddenly it began to shift to around here, which is around 100 to about 500 hertz. So one is obviously louder than the other. The one of interest here is the one that covers the bottom right screen. So the right one and the bottom left one refer to the raps when I first was listening to them, sounded like somebody beginning to formulate words. Because there's a question I asked back in July with what are the significance of the raps? Why is it everybody hears them, from hauntings to poltergeist to all cases? We all hear footsteps, raps, bangs, thuds. What is the significance? And what I was seeing is the normal sounds of raps were disappearing and they're being replaced with different sounds, then beginning to almost formulate words, if that makes sense. The top left one is these three strikes. It's actually reported as three. I've heard three raps. When I pulled the footage audio, there are actually five. One very low, number one. Number two is higher. Number three is lower. Four is higher. Now, to able to do this by simply, I ask you to tap 5 times and get number one and number three lower than the one before it is quite difficult to do. If you try it, I have, it's quite difficult. So what we see here is a big thump of frequency, which is number 5, followed by 4 separate peaks of frequency. But the different, again, doesn't make any sense. So these raps seem to perform differently if it is that a human was involved. We also had an issue of 20, well, not an issue, but an event of 21 raps. It was almost like a machine gun effect, which you heard on the camera. Now, the only way I could count these is by simply time stretching out, which is simple terms, slowing it down and counting the raps. And there is exactly 21, followed by 2 louder raps with a bigger gap. What I can't do is to duplicate the same 21 raps in the same time frame, even using 2 hands, left, right, because at some point both of them are doing nothing. It takes me twice as long to strike 21 times compared to the one that was recorded back in August. So that's that one. So that's a wrap. I'm sorry if I'm rushing through. I just want to get as much at you as I can because I really want you to then take control of the webinar and ask the questions that you may want to ask. This one is happened over a period of about 10 or 11 days when the family began to report in the living room spontaneous water. The floor was a laminate, so the fine spills of water. The top left one is the ceiling, which you can put out as a rational explanation of one of the kids upstairs has dropped some water, doesn't want to say, and that's what's caused the drips. But the one on the top right, which is where the mirror is there, the staining there, that was coming from the wall, and we couldn't find the location of where this water's come from. It seemed to just seep out of the wall. This was frustrating for the family because they just literally 4 or 5 months before re-emulsioned the living room. So you can imagine they weren't happy over that. And the strangest one was the TV. There was no location found where this water came from, such as the ceiling, on CCTV, no one threw water at it, yet water appeared spontaneously on the screen and dripped down it. No explanation for that. Then after 10, 11 days, it simply dried up, disappeared, and no more further water reports were made. I'd like to just quickly cover this one, mainly because this occurs a little bit later after the main event. You'll see where why I think this is important, because you may be able to provide us some information as to what is the smoking gun for this case, because it's something we've never really been able to understand. Why was this, hardworking, working class family being subjected to this phenomena? So what actually happened is, I'll give you a bit of a lowdown about the way that I've been dealing with it. It may be helpful to those that you investigate. Is over the 20 months, we've actually evolved how we document this. We're dealing with over 1,300 separate events. How can we put this into some sort of data storage which is understandable and usable for later? So this is straight out the diary. So what you see there, the date of the 4th of August, then report 324. That references the how many actual investigations we've applied to each seat. This is just CCTV. So the family experienced something, do the online form, which is the 324, then send us the video. And without the form, we don't look at the video. And what actually then they have to do at the same time is, this is an idea and the advantage you have when working with an organisation like ASSAP, in particular, in my case, the SPR, is we throw ideas, opinions around. And it was Dr. Graham Kidd, who's the chairman of the Spontaneous Case Committee, suggested that when the reports are made, that we ask the individual two questions. One is, how awake are they? So, for example, if I just got out of bed, I'm half asleep, something happens, I may give a number of 4. But if I'm fully alert, fully awake, I'm going to give a number of 10, fully awake. When the event occurred, they also have to give a number as, how does the house feel? In this case, it's 8. I know that is subjective, but it's better than nothing. And when I then give the data to Yinska test, then is to try and get it into the format I'm after, which is, are we going to start seeing is the house number begin to fall down, but we then see an increase in activity and vice versa. That's the reason why that gets asked. So in this particular incident, is what I mentioned and said in the July webinar, is the 2 younger children, which are twins, boy and a girl, age 12, have generally been left unscathed by the phenomena. It's the rest of the family that gets subjected to it. But that began to change just coming into springtime, and that's what I said in the July webinar. And that's continued, particularly over the female. The females reported on 7 occasions mimicking. One occasion was a mother, and the other 6 occasions, including the one I'm going to talk to about shortly, has been our older sister, who's 17. So in this particular incident, what actually happens is, she's in the downstairs loop and she hears her sister say, "Hi, you in there? How long are you going to be?" She comes out the door, she can't see her. So she shouts her. She's actually in her bedroom, comes out, "What do you want? You've just been shouting me." "No, I haven't." So the video that was sent to us by the family shows this 12-year-old going to her mother on video and explaining what she's just experienced. And it's quite compelling, because this is a 12-year-old girl at the end of the day. And she uses a term, she sounded a bit odd. So when the question was asked what she meant by that, she said she sounded robotic. Make of that what we wish. And I'm just going to flash back to the. I really should have put the screens on again, really. This is the ground floor. The daughter is in this room here, which is number 12. That is the camera. She comes into the living room, number 7, talks to some other on the sofa. This camera records her. So it's a simple task for me now to go get that camera, audio, and listen to what this girl has reported. There's nothing on there. Nothing. And this is not the first time this occurs. So the question, as I spoke to Karen about this a few nights ago, Is she hearing a disembodied projected sound, which is this is in the bathroom? I would have still expected this high quality camera, because it's been changed over recent times, to have picked that up, but it doesn't. It doesn't record anything. Not unprecedented. Randy Lieback himself mentioned that he heard footsteps together with his colleagues, yet none of the audio recorder picked it up. Is this young girl, in fact, receiving these methods telepathically? I know it may sound a bit spacey, but I know the camera certainly didn't pick it up. Yet the video of this young girl talking to her mother is incredibly compelling. So I'd be interested what your thoughts are on that one. Quick one on the TV. This is Douglas from day one of this case. Um, Never got on top of it. And the reason why I just sort of cover this one is because this got raised after the last webinar. Is this particular one, it was 9:30 at night on the 26th of August, is if I would go to the remote control or use an app or use Alexa, if I want to commit some form of fraud to turn the volume up to full volume, what you see on the right-hand side of the screen is the volume start to increase. This doesn't. It just goes from like number 5, bang, full volume. There's no indication. That can't be duplicated on remote controls or the use of apps. A week or so after, obviously we don't have cameras in the bathrooms. However, the lady Occupy reported she was in the upstairs first floor bathroom. Bang, bang, bang! 3 bottles fly off the shelf. We hear them on camera. The reason why the links are there for the SBR to go and listen to it. And there's a video that the lady did as well to explain what actually occurred. So again, in this bathroom, 1, 2, 3, 3 bottles just launch themselves. Again, it's a personal experience. We've got no other evidence to back that up except the CCTV, which records the audio. Now, what we're planning to do, as I mentioned back in July, is within 2 previous investigations. One at the end of January 2023, when Kieran Farrell, Caroline McKendrick, and Martin Gibson went to the house, spent 3 days there, but stayed in hotels, did a great job. It was more of a hybrid reconnaissance visit, get a feel of the place, but we got some data from it. Last September, we spent 6 days and 5 nights in the property. This time, this investigation was going to occur from the 8th of September up to the 19th of September, 11 days. Excuse me. Now, the family were on holiday from the 8th to 17th. You probably wonder why they're going to stay there for additional 2 days. The reason for that is when the family go on holiday while we're there, they have comparative peace, or they did do. When they return, it all begins to spring into action, including the coin report, which I discussed in the July webinar, which is about the closest we've ever come to the holy grail, really, of paranormal investigation, where we can rule out third-party involvement. This coin appears to just manifest itself out of midair and goes on this 65-foot strange trajectory with no explanation. And obviously on the way strikes the male householder on the side of his face. So they were in fear, and this actually happened within 2 hours of them returning from holiday in June. They also, you may remember of the July one, of the salt bottle that shot itself in the air and went into the kitchen. I played that video back in July. So Kieran Farrell and together with Nick Towell were kind of going to stay there for them additional 2 days to be there to just simply document if anything does occur. That's the reason why they were staying there. The SPR, I've got to acknowledge that they worked overtime of getting some experimental equipment, built, paid for, and delivered in time. And that goes from Peter Johnson, the secretary, to even to the Vice President Bernard Carr, to Karen, to Kirsty Allen, Graham Kidd. A lot of people were involved getting this kit ready. Uh, I'm not sure how much I can say about that. I'll leave that one to for Kieran Farrell to answer because he's data protection officer for the SPR, so he'll know the answer for that. But the SPR were going to throw massive resources into this, and the intention was to hit it for 11 days, trying to duplicate the unusual measurements of the energy that we did last year, together with experimental equipment. Multiple people. We may have had Graham Kidd, John Fraser, multiple different people being there to try and see if we're able to this fully evidence, this fully operational poltergeist. 4 days before they're due to go on holiday on the 8th this is a Thursday night, is Nick lives a little bit further than we do to the location, and he very kindly agreed to take over the cameras because before this, there were 11 covert cameras in the property. We don't have any involvement with that for obvious reasons. But when the investigators move in there for that period of time, we need the control of the cameras and the access needs to be moved away from the family. That's why Nick attended the property on the Thursday night. What Nick experienced then was rapping. This is fantastic, good third party evidence, really. So Nick's put this statement together. I'm not going to read it all the way through because you're probably reading it as I'm talking anyway. Apart from attempting to knock on the walls, he did make attempts to try and debunk it. And I think his last comment says it all. I feel a not so light to come from the TV, but the direction at the start certainly made me think that they're anomalous in origin, and maybe the camera caught the taps. Now, what we find with these sounds is in a sister property I dealt with some years ago in Chester. We were in the room and we could hear the rapping, but we were unable to define where the location comes from. We were either looking up or looking down. We were unable to say exactly where the sounds were actually originating from. So when I spoke to Nick, he's fairly confident that he did certainly hear raps. He's just not sure where they came from. So it's nice to get a third party confirmation. So when Nick spoke to me late on Thursday night, he said, get the video. So, okay, that's no problem. What I'll do on a Friday morning, I will request the video. And while the family are away on holiday, I'll look at that. So we should be able to see on TV Nick walking around trying to locate where these raps are coming from, and at the same time have the audio to back that up. However, fate was to intervene because at 6:30 the following morning, the house burnt down. So, a bit of a shock for most people, I think, and that's the damage it was caused. I'm just going to flick through a little bit of the backstory before I go back to this event that occurred. So the fire we know started in the wardrobe of bedroom 2. It's 6:32. 6:32 was taken from the fire investigation. That was then they received the phone call to say there's a fire. It only started after the female occupier went into bedroom 2 after being downstairs for over 1 hour. She was downstairs with the youngest daughter. One of the kids was still in bedroom 1 asleep, and the youngest male, he's in the shower, having a shower ready for school. Within 6 minutes, the windows are blown outwards. Maybe what I should have said at the beginning, nobody was hurt. Nobody was hurt with this. I should have said that at the beginning. Sorry if that was an error. It was investigated and reported as accidental. So what I'm going to do now, and quickly play is a 30-second video of the war through. This was done after the family returned a couple of weeks later. There's no audio on this, and I have put text in there to tell you which room it is, and you can actually see for yourself just how much damage was done here. Hopefully that's playing okay. Right, okay. As you can see, absolute total loss. The only room that survived was the living room, although it was heavily damaged by water. The kitchen, because of the fire started in bedroom two, the ceiling came down, took the kitchen with it as well. Then now I spoke obviously to I think I'm still shocked when I see it now. It's on the Friday morning. This is literally a couple of days before they're due to go on holiday. The clothes went, including all the holiday money. Heartbreaking. Now, when I spoke to the lady on the Friday, the investigation was then taking place. Police attended because one of the first things they're going to do is to absolutely make sure there's no risk of any arson there. So that generally, I've attended as part of the police. I'm sure Caroline McKendrick has as well. Attended to shut down the location while the investigation look into what the cause of the fire. I spoke to her very early on, probably about 10, 11 o'clock. Obviously, they're in a state of shock, but she told me what she, in fact, had witnessed. I spoke to her when they returned from holiday a couple of weeks later. She told me exactly the same story, and again on Sunday. Nick Terrell attended where they're staying now last night to take a more detailed statement from the family. Nick may have his own opinion and thoughts to make later, but she's never deviated from her story. Now, I'm going to be incredibly careful now how I put this over because I promised the lady two things. One, I would say advise everybody that's got their own house is have contents insurance because they didn't. And the other one was to put her story over what actually happened. And I think it's quite important because as an investigator, it's our job is to investigate evidence if we can, take statements, as much information, put it and collect it together for other people made to form a judgment and opinion. So it's quite important that I report exactly what this lady said to me to you. I am going to take the view, and I have done, of not having no opinion whatsoever. I don't have an opinion on this. What the fire service said is it definitely started in bedroom two, definitely started in the wardrobe. When he went in, you've seen the damage itself. Very difficult for any fire officer to find out exactly what may have caused this. They know there was no accelerant used, but they know where it started. So they just purely listed it as accidental. They did find the remnants of a burnt out lighter on the bottom rail of these huge built-in wardrobes. We've all seen them. And they found a melted light at the bottom. They suggested that may have somehow got damaged, and that's what was the cause of the ignition. What the lady says, and she never deviated from this, pretty well mirrors that with one slight difference. What she said is she was in the kitchen with the youngest daughter, comes up the stairs into bedroom two to pick up a couple of tops. Got to bear in mind they're going away in a couple of days' time to Morocco on holiday, and they're getting ready. What she then notices is the fire in the wardrobe. The door's open, and there she sees a fire. She runs downstairs because she can't get in the bathroom because the son's in there in the shower. Runs down, gets a container, runs back upstairs. The fire is now much larger, and as she throws the water to try and drench it, it just moves all the burning material around, and then other things catch fire. What she then does is probably the right thing. Get the daughter and the son out of the property, and they evacuated because 6 minutes later, the windows, top windows are blowing outwards. So I don't have any opinion on this one other than just passing over the story to you people so you know what the story is. Deeply unpleasant time for the family. There is some bright news, or what they thought was the Friday and Saturday night they go to a hotel, stay in a hotel. They're already booked to go to Morocco. They've lost all their holiday money, but they managed to get together and decide we're going to go on holiday anyway. You know, just to get out, just to get them really a different country, trying to get their heads cleared because they know they're going to return to devastation. That I understand. What then happens is the youngest son, who's 12, he's the male of the twins. He feels something hit his foot when he's in Morocco in his hotel room, and he looks down to find a pound coin. A couple of days later, they're in bed. They hear a tinkle. This family has heard hundreds of coins. They know exactly what a coin sounds like. Looked on the floor, and there was a 10p coin. He insists he never took any sterling with them. And as far as they're concerned, they had no reason for these coins to be there. And they come back to the mimic. This again happened while they're on holiday. The same daughter, the 12-year-old, she's gone back to a hotel room to chill out, really. And then what she heard is this older sister again talking to her. She then starts to reply, then realise, hang on a minute, she's in the swimming pool out at the side of the hotel. She comes running down to her mother and told her what had happened. And of course, we got this message then, we're in Morocco, we're having no peace. So you can imagine the stress and anxiety this poor family's gone through. In the end, the family will definitely not be returning to this house. That's it. It's set in stone. The indication is it'll be stripped back to its shell and rebuilt over the next year or so. The family are living about 10 miles away, but some activity is continuing. Not as severe and not as active. They've only lived in this new property for about 2 weeks. When they returned from holiday, they were back in hotels until this other house was got ready, doing some decorating, getting the carpets down. But some unusual activity has been reported. That's another reason why Nick Towell went over to spend some time, a couple hours with the family last night. So hopefully I'll rattle through that not too quickly. And now it's over to you guys for your questions.
Tony, it doesn't often happen, but I'm lost for words.
Yeah. That never happens. Never mind, it's rare.
No, I tell you what, that was such a twist. Oh my God, that poor family. All they'd been going through, and then to have that happen. I mean, that must have come as a real gut punch to you and the other investigators too.
Yeah. It, the phone call I made to because Kieran's booked his train ticket, ready to go there on a Sunday. Nick's going to pick him up from the train station, take him over there. It's a loads of. I actually nearly lost £4,000 worth of gear
Oh,
because I couldn't attend it for that first period. So what I did, I thought, well, I'll just have to post this stuff off. And I was going to send it to the house, but in the end, Nick said, "Well, send it to me, and I'll take it over." I could have lost that, and it was absolutely devastating what happened to this. You know,
yeah.
awful, and
Oh,
it what would have happened to the investigators? Yeah, it'd have been a strange phone call to family on a holiday at Morocco, and it's you know,
I,
just phoning you up to let you know you just burnt your house down. Something
I,
to think about.
I'll tell you what, of all the ways I sort of saw that ending and you ending this fascinating story we've been going through together, I didn't see the fire coming at all. And oh, the pictures are just tragic. But thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now, you obviously we've got Caroline here tonight, we've got Kieran, we've got Nick, we've got yourself, everybody who was sort of involved in that investigation.
Yeah.
So if any of those people want to jump in and answer any questions that come up, that would be amazing. I've got a few later.
Yeah, that's right. Because sometimes we'll have two, three, we have odd days of no activity, might have 3 days, nothing. Then other days, it's over recent times, got up in the morning, there was 5 reports that came in from the night before. That's five just in a matter of hours. Because if the TV turns on at 7, turns off again at 7:30, the two events is not one. So important thing is to ensure that they are done that way. Obviously, if you report 21 wraps, that's just one event because I'm not going to separate that. But
Yeah.
the rest of them are just. But there has been this huge escalation, which is what we were expecting and hoping would happen when the guys were going to move in there in September.
Well, fabulous. I mean, that's exactly why we want to hear this story from the case you've been in. It's contemporaneous. You've been investigating, you've been right in the middle, you've been part of sorting it out. And what it's telling us is what are events to one person might not be such significant events to another. Um,
Yeah. You're
yeah,
right because when I was there in July, I said there was 1,095. That was July. Now including September. There've been 125 additional events that occurred. So clearly, it's still ongoing. Oh, we thought it was. Obviously, it's burnt to
yeah.
the ground. But
Oh, I'm sure we'll come on to more of that later. But I think
yeah,
Christian asked a very important question, and I know it's something that's becoming more and more prevalent in investigations. How is the mental state of the householder? I mean, and Christian asked that before we even got to the fire.
yeah.
How was the householder behaving through all of this? Were they, you know, taking it in their stride? Were they how?
Um, it's been difficult. We've obviously been there. We've known the family for 2 years. So become friends with them, obviously, and the massive amounts of empathy. I can remember on the Friday when I asked the question, are you insured? The answer was no. It's heartbreaking. I've spent 5 nights in that property. Kieran likewise stayed that week. Caroline's been in there, and they know the family. She's a hard-working family. We can only hope that we will recover. And when I spoke to her on Sunday, I was a lot more optimistic that they will get themselves through this. Um, it's very difficult when you're trying to investigate the case, but at the same time, yeah, the empathy with having to apply and support network around the family. Obviously, it's a good, strong London family. They've got friends, neighbours that have been helping through, and they will get them. I've no doubt, but it's not fractured by any stretch. It's been quite impressive. They're obviously in a lot better place they are now than what they were before they went on holiday. So fingers crossed. Well, I'm quite sure they'll get that.
It's fantastic to know. That's really reassuring. Thank you. And Kieran has sort of backed you up there by saying that the family coped with everything that was going on very well in his view.
The
Yeah,
thing is with them, Claire, is that I've been in this for 37 years. I'm quite sure Investigators on there. I've had similar, if not longer, periods. This is the most proactive family or people that I've ever worked for. They've done everything possible to try and help us, from cameras to repeat phone calls where I'm beginning to question parts of it, when you're looking for the rational explanations and so on. I don't have to wait days for replies. They really have been a dream family to work for, and it's been a relatively straight. If it weren't for that, it'd been more complex. But they are one heck of a um, comp, proactive family. Just wanted to see the back of it, and which is what we're hoping was going to happen. I sincerely hope that's the case, that they're able to move in on a new property, build back again. They've still got a long way to go because everything was total loss, as you saw with the videos. The kids' computers, PlayStations, all that's gone up in smoke. So, yeah, bad times.
how awful, but a brilliant family for you to work with, as you said, and really the sort of family you dream of working with in a case like this. They're helpful, they know what they need to do, they seem to be very measured in their approach. I was just thinking, your thoughts always go to people you know, don't they? And I was just thinking if it was my parents, for example, that this happened to, they're the most wonderful people in the world, but I imagine they would be totally the opposite because they would totally blank out the fact this was happening at all. They don't believe in it, they wouldn't acknowledge it. They would probably live in fear of it, but not say anything. And you found this family that not only have found you to help them, but they're willing to come forward and speak out about it. I mean, you've kind of hit the mother load there, haven't you?
Yeah, that's right. Because at some point, all the data will become, everything's transparent. The SPR have got everything that I've got. There's nothing that they haven't got, and all that will be almost certainly presented, ownership transferred to the ownership of SPR for further research. I can't ask any more for the family really than that. All I've got to do for the short term is to ensure anonymity for the family and location, because um, we know what happens in the case of South Shields, the Bothell Seattle house when they got ghost adventures installed there. All this adverse publicity does add on to the stress, because when a poltergeist comes calling, there are victims here, and it's something we've always been aware of. So, and we've
Yeah.
got to know the family very well over this last couple of years, and we've grown up with the kids. We've spent this year, it'll be 3 Christmases.
Oh my
You know,
goodness.
I've been 3 Christmases. This is how long, and I do hope it has flatlined, and it's just a bit of byproduct. We'll wait and see. Nick may have another opinion because he was actually over with the family at the new house last night. He did a welfare visit for us. So yeah. So over to your questions, Claire.
Well, do you know what? Where there's a poltergeist, there's a family, and you seem to have balanced both very well. And you're caring about them, which is brilliant to hear. Nick, did you want to update us on the latest? How are they now? How are they of last night? As much as you can
Yeah,
tell us.
yeah, I can. I certainly can. Yeah, they have a very they're very positive, friendly, welcoming family. Um, you walk into the house and there's absolutely no thought that you're walking into a family that have had experiences. Very, very normal, talking, very open. You couldn't think anything untoward. I mean, very natural, obviously. At the end of the day, you're aware of obviously the events that have happened to them, and you can see it has worn them down a little bit. And certainly, I think obviously having this fire going on in the house is, in my view, I was trying to explain about how fires tend to work with poltergeists, so they never normally burn houses down. I mean, you just get a small flame, and it's kind of the idea is to gain attention, the gas being turned on, that kind of thing. But it felt like if it was, if we trying to say that it was actually poltergeist activity, then in my view, it crossed a serious line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you a quick question, Nick, if you don't mind?
Yeah, of course.
Did I cover the lady householder's opinion? Okay, I didn't, because obviously,
Oh, completely.
yeah. I know you were there obviously last night, did the statements and so on, just to make sure that I didn't miss anything, because she was insistent that I needed to put her point of view over, and I think I tried to do that. And like you've just said, it's a big jump to blame the poltergeist.
Yeah,
It's just uncomfortable territory. The
completely.
reason why I've taken probably the coward's approach of not having an opinion, so it's difficult, isn't it?
No, absolutely. You're kind of hoping that it is obviously a natural, as much as awful as it is, a natural event. But I think once I had or I had it explained to me, the circumstances of the actual fire, how it took place, I had been 50-50, and I now find it very difficult to think, how did it naturally occur? And I don't know. I mean, it threw me a little bit, and obviously speaking to the family, especially the lady concerned, no question, she was absolutely convinced of the origin of the fire, how it started, and not explained away by the fire brigade, I don't think. So
because the old pyro pult, as they call them, it's incredibly rare. Okay, it did happen in Enfield. I suppose if we take a jump into the world of fantasy and say, well, okay, Poltergeist started it. Oh, it's dark and dangerous. But there is a counter argument to that, Nick, where we could say Kelly was in the kitchen for an hour and a half. She then comes upstairs to get a top. That's when she saw the fire. So another argument could be is she was brought up from the kitchen into bedroom to witness the fire, because what the lady householder stressed to me is, had she left it, had she been downstairs when the fire erupted, the two kids would have been trapped, one in bedroom one in the bathroom. So on one hand, you can think, well, okay, we'll blame the pulp for this. The other hand is maybe it stepped in to save them.
yeah, that's
So
true.
you can go one way or the other. I
Interesting.
know it's controversial, and I prefer not to have an opinion on this because it's dangerous territory for me
I
to
agree.
tread down that road. So, and the people listening tonight will have their own different opinions. Some will maybe nod their head, some may be shaking their head. That's up to them really on that one. So yeah. Carry on. Sorry, Nick.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As I say, it threw a different light to it. I mean, as I say, you kind of hope that it's a natural event, but it just seemed, the timing seemed very peculiar. Obviously, bearing in mind what had happened before when they were going on holiday, and the devastation in the kitchen. So you start to think, that it's got a bit of a pattern. Again, you're right. Do you come down on one side or not? I don't know. I mean, I have to say, I did change my opinion last night. I was 50-50, and last night I felt differently. So
yeah, that's one of the great things of working with a family for so long. We've got to know them, and I've never ever had need to question the integrity of the family
100%.
ever. And I think when we look at this in the cold light of day, we'll probably never answer it, because when we look, every investigator on the webinar tonight will always looking for that holy grail. The closest I've ever come was that coin report that happened there to the male occupier. But generally, it's even if Henry the Eighth manifested in front of Claire Davy tonight, kissed her on the cheek, then walked through a solid brick wall, captured. Someone would say to Claire, "You're hallucinating, you're had drink, you're on drugs, infrasound, black mold, whatever that they come out with to try and explain it away." So there isn't, I don't think, 100% such thing as 100% paranormal. I think we've got quite close to it with this game, and we do know a lot more about this weird phenomena than what we did probably 2 years ago. But it's been a big team. What is there, a dozen of us involved with this now?
Yeah, I would say, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, no, that's it. I mean, yeah, it's been a complete eye opener. And you're right. Everything you said about the integrity of the family gives an absolute weight towards, possibly what it seems like something paranormal is happening. I know I shouldn't be necessarily expressing an opinion, but it would almost be counterproductive to argue against it because of the amount of evidence that's accumulated. So yeah, that's my view on it, basically.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for your input and thanks for coming along, Nick. Appreciate that.
No problem. No problem.
Amazing.
You,
Yeah, thank you both. It's great to hear you both talking about that. And we just had a little bit of input from Emma Harvey. Hope you're still there, Emma. Um, about the robotic voice you were talking about. Emma, did you want to say something about that? I'm not sure. She may have gone now.
no, right, okay.
Yeah, okay. That's fine. So Kieran says the conclusion of the investigation into the fire was that it was a tragic accident. Yeah, fantastic that no one was hurt. Thank God for that.
Mm.
Yeah, and then there's some people talking about the strange origin potentially of the fire. Yes, lots of girls talking about the straighteners, the potential of it being heated straighteners. Definitely something to remember. If you catch your finger on those once or twice, you'll know the danger they can pose. So, yeah, yeah. I mean, so they don't know. They don't know what caused the fire, essentially.
No, all they've said is they know the location. It was bedroom 2, and it did definitely started in the wardrobe. That's identical to what I got told earlier before they concluded the investigation, the applied fire service. And that's the story that she stuck with, I knew when I was coming along, I was on walking on eggshells because I'm going to be talking about something that is extreme to suggest a Polt did it. And it's, the reason why I have the need to sit on the fence and not have an opinion. But I think it's only right and proper that I report what I've been told, Claire. Otherwise, I wouldn't be as transparent, would I? So,
Absolutely, yeah. And I think you've balanced it really well, if I can just say that. I think, yeah, we've got a brilliant story, exactly what we wanted to hear from you. We wanted to hear what happened to the family, what happened to the house, what your theories were, but you certainly haven't given us anything we can go away and think, oh yeah, I know where that is.
yeah,
And yeah, no, that's been really well judged by you. Um,
yeah, okay.
Something Kieran said is really interesting. There was some off-site activity in the homes of other family members who live independently of the main family group.
Mm,
Were
yeah,
you, were
that's
you
true.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Sort of a contagion. Kieran, is there
Well,
anything Oh, go on, sorry, Tony.
um, this is actually a true story. Are you familiar with Haunted History Chronicles, Claire?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Right. They've just released a month, about a few weeks ago, a Enfield podcast, which I did for Michelle Fisher
Hmm.
and the onto this kind of. I did it about 3 months ago.
Yeah.
So we started about 7, 7:15, and about an hour and a half late into this podcast, she says, "Tony, I've got need to stop for a few minutes. I need to go down, disappear." A couple of minutes later, she comes back and we can continue. Never thought anything of it. The following morning, now Michelle Fisher has done a podcast with the lady householder from the case. So there is a connection there. You should have mentioned that earlier. So anyway, in the following, it finished about 9:30. I go downstairs. picks my phone up, and there were 3 messages from the lady householder to say, television full volume, television full volume, television full volume, 3 times, from about 8:30 onwards. So what I did, I sent Michelle Fisher an email the following day and said, look, when you go to the podcast to edit it, can you tell me roughly when it was I was talking about electronic behaviour in Enfield and comparing it to the current case that I'm working, to see if that coincides with these messages, because we've not had any reports from the family over the TV, you see. She immediately comes back to me and says, you won't believe this. The reason why I ended the podcast and had to disappear for a minute is because her television went to full volume. And so we seem to have simultaneous contagion. One, I'm talking about it on a podcast. Two, the household is not even aware of it. Sends me 3 messages to say television gone to full volume. And Michelle Fisher suddenly had the same event occur to her. Television went to full volume. Never happened to her before. And it was her husband that shouted at her, what's going on? She didn't connect till the email the following day. So we've had the same contagion issue. Jinska's had an event over in the Netherlands. Amanda Griffiths has had an issue. Caroline McKendrick's had an issue. So if there is any form of contagion, it seems to occur to the females. I don't. Kieran Jammy doesn't. I don't think Nick does. John Face has never commented, or Graham Kidd. Yet, if anything happens, and it's bizarre, Claire, for me to suggest that does sound bizarre, but what I can't argue is this some sort of weird coincidence?
Well, you've been in it, was it 37 years? So you're obviously going to sort of make up connections and things that you can see. No, you may well have a point there. Yeah, that's a really good point, actually.
Can I come in here, please, Claire?
Hello, Kieran. Good evening. How are you?
Good evening, Claire. Good to see you.
Hello, Kieran.
Hello, Tony. There's several things, really. The first thing is that this particular case is a very complex one, because I mentioned in the chat there are several family members who, in my estimation at least, are psychically sensitive. So phenomena could be centered around several of them, although principally around the male householder in relation to things like coin ports. But the TV behavior is something different again, and some of the other phenomena yet different again. So it's a question of trying to figure out what's going on, because there could be several foci of the person-centered phenomena. But at the same time, there is haunting type phenomena, the hearing of voices, the seeing of apparitions, and then the raps, which are sort of in the middle.
Yeah.
Now, the thing with this is myself, Tony, and Amanda Griffiths spent several days actually in the house carrying out an investigation, and we all had our own separate experiences. One of the things that I found that does happen in haunted houses is these inexplicable sort of jot type phenomena, and they get more common within a haunted house than they would otherwise be. People have them occasionally, nobody takes too much notice, but when you get one thing, another thing and another thing, you start to think, is that something about the environment? And then there's this matter of the sort of the off-site activity and so on, which has the sort of characteristic of a sort of attached spirit or something like that, because there could be some sort of symbiotic relationship between the more sensitive members of the household and any spirits that might be there. So that was one of the issues I know we're sort of looking into, and there are also a whole lot of energy zones that we identified during that investigation. And I think we were doing some groundbreaking work looking at those, because environmental readings would be slightly different within those small energy zones than there would be 2 or 3 feet in any other direction.
Yeah.
Well, why would that be? And that's another sort of series of things that we were looking into. So all in all, it is a very sort of rich and complex picture of a poltergeist type haunting, if you want to roll the two together, or a haunting type poltergeist. It's complex. So everything is in there in that sense. But it's difficult, and therefore it's difficult to make sense of any of it. I don't know, Tony, if you'd like to come back or comment on any of that, and of course Caroline and Nick as well.
Yeah, no, you're right, Kev, because as I said back in July webinar, that we call it the case because it's so confusing. We're dealing with haunting phenomena, dealing with poltergeist phenomena. John Fraser, his table suggestion of one paranormal power that combines everything. And maybe, I think it was Peter McHugh mentioned about we need a new terminology for it. Call it something else, hybrid, whatever, because it seems to be multitasking, multiple different victims, and you're left with a confusing pit. How many conversations, Karen, have we had? And I think, what on earth is going on? It's like, no wonder I've got no hair left. Really, really confusing picture. And, if it ended tomorrow, we wouldn't have any explanation, would we?
No, I mean, this is the thing, because it's very difficult to be able to tell the difference between what might be PK, because somebody is psychically sensitive, and maybe something got to them in the moment, something happened, which can occasionally occur, and that's the reason why, as you mentioned, the questions are asked. How do you feel, and how do you feel about the house?
Yeah, that's right.
So it could be PK to a certain extent, could be a jot, or it could be genuine poltergeist phenomena. How do you tell the difference? And that's what's been sort of stretching our brains over the course of the last couple of years.
A few times, yeah.
I can see Caroline's got her hand up.
Oh, right, okay.
Go on, Caroline.
Hi. One thing that I wanted to add to the fantastic description that both the boys have said is Tony and I have worked together closely on numerous cases over the last 8-9 years. And what we found in high end, because we've been incredibly lucky to have another case before this that was our bread and butter for understanding how to head into this one. And what we found, is that correct, Tony, that every high end case that we have with poltergeist activity also has another type haunting with it?
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's what Karen was undoubtedly saying. I totally agree with you, Caroline. We had it with, you on about the Sherborne one?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there was haunting stuff. And that's the reason why we called it, I call it the Somerset case, didn't we, in the end, as I've done with this one. It's confusing. I think when you mention the word poltergeist, it does get people's attention because it centers them in a particular way. Everyone loves the poltergeist. But in there, you've got this weird haunting phenomena, which isn't generally, if there is such a thing as a typical poltergeist. And I wouldn't know how to put, if we split it in the middle, how much is poltergeist, how much is haunting, 50-50,
Exactly.
64. It's difficult.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad you raised that one about Somerset. That was a good comparison. Yeah. It's 8 years ago. Blimey.
Yeah, that's when it started. Obviously, that case went on for longer than a year and a half, didn't it?
Yeah, 18 months. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And also, she showed elements of contagion afterwards when she moved to a new property.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I've never had it myself personally. In the case of this one, it's generally the females, Caroline, that had the contagion. Jenske's found jewelry in the Hoover pipe, coins on the chair, and they're in the Netherlands. Amanda's had a load of weird stuff occurring.
The very first night that we went in, Kieran, you, me, and Martin, into this property, what happened at the dining room table in the restaurant that we were eating at?
Oh, yes.
Oh, the coin. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a coin report. Yeah, I remember that. We discussed that in great
All of a
detail.
sudden, we were sat there and we could hear this chink of a coin hit the table in the hotel pub that we were having our meal at. And we looked down, and the 2p coin, I think it was 2p, if I remember rightly, was the same date that the house was built.
Yes, that's right. I remember that. Yeah.
No, it was
That down to an odd,
it was the
it could
date you
just be an
moved
odd
in,
coincidence.
2015.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
knew it had some link that it was
Yeah.
to that
Yeah.
date, but there was
Yeah.
nobody else sat near us that could have possibly have thrown that coin.
Yeah. Yeah, that was first day, wasn't it? Friday. Yeah. Weird.
Can I make one further point, which is it's really partly about the family, because I have experienced a great deal of paranormal activity in my own life, and I've been investigated many years ago. It's one thing for us as investigators and psychical researchers to look into all this stuff and come up with theories and so on. It's quite another to be at the centre of it. And when you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning because something has woken you up, and then you have to make the long journey, say for example to or from the toilet, and you hope that nothing's going to happen to you, and if it does, that it won't be serious. And by the time you get back to bed and go to sleep and wake up in the morning, that whatever it was that went bump in the night can stay in your memory, and you're not going to have that again. But the reality of a family going through this sort of activity is it's always with you, it's always there, and it's very difficult to cope with or to put it to one side and lead a normal life insofar as you can.
I love the attitude of you and all the investigators that have been involved in this, and I have a lot of respect for you all. It sounds like you've been very sympathetic to the family, to the fact that they still have to go through their lives day to day. And it sounds like you've been there to help them and not to gain anything personally from it, which is brilliant to hear. So thank you, Kieran. Thank you, Tony, Caroline, and Nick, and everyone else that was involved. I just want to ask a little bit about the contagion thing, because Darren Hudson has talked about the contagion
Yeah.
thing here, in that it was a bit similar to the Linder case. Obviously, we know Keith Linder has been a guest of ours with the Washington State Poltergeist.
Yeah.
He's been on here before, and then I think Bill, I'm just scrolling down, Bill, to find you made a comment about another case. What was that one you were talking about in Derbyshire?
Yeah, yes, it was the Lowe's Cottage case. This was splashed all over the national newspapers, actually, because it was tied up with a legal case. The So the people living there, the Smith family, and I don't need to use pseudonyms because it's in the public domain. One of their numerous phenomena was water leaking from a wall when they could find no explanation.
Yeah, remember this. Yeah.
And they were sued by the previous owners for not paying the final instalment of the purchase price. And the previous owners said, well, it wasn't haunted. The Smiths said, you should have warned us it was haunted. We actually did a slightly belated investigation, as we couldn't get a foot in the door while the Smiths were there. But the next owner, Tim Chilton, let us do an investigation, and I actually saw this water on the wall. Subsequently, a colleague of mine ran a metal detector over the wall, and as the owner had suggested, there were no metal pipes behind the wall. There were no water pipes there. So that was rather mysterious.
Wow. Okay, yeah, I can definitely see a similarity there. What about you, Tony?
Yeah. How do you explain that, Kieran?
Bill?
Well, that's one of those things. Sometimes you can get other forms of report, not just coins, as occurred in this particular case. Mind you, there have been other types of report, but it's mostly coins. Water and other stains can happen. I was involved in a case many years ago where it was thought that it was paranormal. In that case, it wasn't, because it was water sort of seeping down a wall from a defective tank. But the thing is, with this, you don't know. And that's why, I mean, there's been a comment in the chat about taking samples and seeing if there's anything abnormal would show up. And also, things like do your background investigation in terms of plumbing and buildings and so on. And if you can rule that out, then you might have something that's paranormal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. Totally agree with that.
Brilliant. We have loads of other questions and comments, and lots of them are understandably saying, "Thank you so much for a brilliant." It's really really good to know what's happened at the end of this. I mean, it's not a great outcome for the family, but Tony, you seem quite optimistic. They're going in the right direction. You seem quite confident that they will find their way and it will be sorted out, which is really really good to know. Um, and obviously, we want to have you back again to do another webinar soon. Is there anybody else that wants to ask Tony or any of the other investigators involved with this anything about this case? No, you've all gone shy again. Must be that
Yeah.
time of evening.
The only thing I will say, Claire, I think it's important that I put this across, is that it's never been my case. There were multiple people have been involved, from the outset, really, and it could never have been the quality investigation without the help from. We've got people on today, Yinska, Kieran, Caroline, Nick. And likewise with people at the SPI, Darren Ritson's been involved with the case as well as Keith Linder. Keith Linder was the one that introduced the family to me in the first place. One for Keith Linder. The case had never come my way anyway. And I've had some good advice from Darren Ritson, particularly over the contagion side of things. And I've learnt my lessons from, because poor Darren was subject to some real adverse negativity because it went into the public domain too early. But I do need to acknowledge a lot of people, Claire. It's never been about me.
Brilliant. And Darren was the South Shields poltergeist, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. He's a good lad, Darren. We shared experience, and I think the investigator, Kieran will back me up with this. The investigator can become a victim, because this has dominated our lives for close on 2 years. When the family, in the morning, I get up at 8 o'clock, grab me a cup of tea, sit down for the computer, see what's come in for the night before. I'm always working 2-3 days behind the scenes because it has been so active. Come lunchtime, I'd be doing other things, and suddenly I was left with these mornings thinking, "Oh, is it dominated my life so much that I suddenly got these spare time to do other things, So yeah. So I think the mental health of the investigator needs consideration as well, Kieran, doesn't it?
Well, yes, but it was really a question of putting the family first. And since I think probably Claire wants to draw this to a close soon,
That's fine. Yeah,
I'd like to say that it has been a really good good investigation with PIUK, and a joint investigation between PIUK and the SPR Spontaneous Cases Committee. And that collaboration has worked really well. And it has meant that the SPR, after a bit of a break from carrying out on-site investigations, were able to get back into the scene again and do well in a very complex case. So I think that's a plus for everyone, and of course through these webinars also for ASSAP as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well
There'll be
said.
part 3 at some point.
Yeah, I think there may need to be actually. Yeah. Well said, both of you. Thank you very much all for contributing. It's lovely to have this update. It's really good. Thank you all. Dan has come in. He's got some brilliant questions, some brilliant observations about the really technical side of it, the electronics, the chlorine potentially, the leaking from the wall. Dan, please, I'm sure Tony and Kieran would be delighted to answer anything you would like to ask them if you post it on our Facebook page. About any of the technical stuff. I'm really sorry we didn't get to it tonight. That might be why there needs to be a part 3, but hey, we would all love that anyway.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fabulous. We will see you all next week. Have a brilliant weekend. We're not at Halloween this weekend, are we? No, I'm getting ahead of myself. No, that's the following week. But have a good week, whatever you're up to. Thanks all for your support and everything and for coming along this evening. And hopefully we will see you here next week. Thank you, Tony,
Okay.
and good
Right.
evening.
Right. Good night, everybody. Bye bye.
Good night.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.